Well, we know that flooding is the #1 natural disaster on the planet. We know that it accounts for about half of all natural disaster costs. It's increasing. It's increasing for a number of reasons: hydrological intensification, climate change, aging infrastructure, more and more people moving into urban coastal environments. You get all these factors together and you have heightened flood risk. A large part of the planet is very vulnerable to flooding, and the costs are enormous. Imagine if we had a tool that would allow people to efficiently take steps to mitigate these costs.
The FloodRISE project is an initiative at UC Irvine that's bringing together academics, students, researchers from several disciplines to see if we can get some new ideas about how we manage coastal flooding in urban areas. And the central idea behind this project is that if we have more information about flood risk locally at the scale of an individual land parcel, we can do a better job of communicating flood risk information and helping people make decisions.
FloodRISE is a signature project for UCI to demonstrate the institutional capacity of our campus from all corners to addressing critical sustainability challenges of our time here in Southern California and with application in flood vulnerable communities around the world. During the first 2 years of this project, our scholars, both in engineering and in social ecology, are developing the modeling tools and the communications tools that will enable flood vulnerable communities to engage a better conversation regarding flood resilience.
In the Tijuana system, right now we've set up a very high-resolution model in an area that's called Goat Canyon, or Los Laureles Canyons. And in that system, you've got a catchment, which when big storms come overhead and drop intense rainfall, that catchment collects the water, funnels it down through channels and towards the US side. And so we built this model, which, two models actually, that work together. The first model is called a hydrologic model. And what it does is it accounts for when the rain comes and hits the land, how much that land soaks into the soil and how much of it runs off. And that tells us basically the volume of water that's coming into that area, and it's going to cause flooding. And then we move that data onto another model which describes how fast the water is going to go, how deep it's going to pool, and how long it's going to pool. So what we're able to develop with this second hydraulic model is a map of basically the region of the system that's wet and how that region is going to grow and shrink over time as a storm comes through and drops rainfall. So in the Newport area, we've set up a hydraulic model of the entire bay system. And that model is basically forced by a few different factors. On the one hand, we can have a big tide rise in the ocean. As the tide rises in the ocean, the model will simulate the water flowing into the bay, the water levels rising, spilling over seawalls, running along streets. And that's one process that the model is able to capture.
FloodRISE is innovative in that we have not only a new way of modeling where water will flow, but we are also developing new ways of communicating about that with communities on the front lines of these changes.
We want to improve resilience to floods. We have lots of information to suggest that floods are going to affect a large number of people, a large amount of property, a large amount of infrastructure.
We can go basically parcel by parcel and say, this site has a certain level of risk, this next site has a different level of risk. We're thinking is that if we have a more sort of fine-scale mapping of the vulnerabilities, we'll be in a better position to allocate resources to try to manage that risk.
We will take the research results and make sure that they are having the broadest impact possible on planning, policy, and design here in Southern California in our project sites, and also at our state capital, and also at our national capital.
The beauty of this project is that it will allow us to model different scenarios and then to test different interventions, to ask ourselves, what would happen if we beefed up the seawall in this way? What would happen if we pre-positioned sandbags over here? What would happen if we were able to build berms quickly here? And we can then look at it, how that will affect the movement of water. What can be saved? How can it be diverted safely? And so on. That's not been possible to do before.
We're doing this as one example of exercising the commitment of the University of California to accelerating the shift to sustainability and climate neutrality in all that we do and the communities that we affect.